So our player characters are approaching the castle, the court of the great emperor, the high priestess, the king, the count, whoever it is. And when the player characters get to this court, there's going to be a whole load of courtiers, ambassadors, soldiers, and so forth. This is a vibrant setting. How do we make this engaging? How do we make this interesting for our players? So let's look at 3 very different kinds of court. And let's look at how we would create this court to make it interesting for the players, depending on the sort of game that we want to run. First of all, Beauty and the Beast, the Walt Disney film. This is set in a royal court. So there is a prince. He's been cursed, but he's still a prince. There are servants. There are people who look after him. He tells them what to do. They serve him. We may not have priests and guards and ambassadors, but this is a kind of simple court. And this works perfectly for the kind of story that Beauty and the Beast is telling. Because all that really happens in Beauty and the Beast is a character from the outside comes into the court, meets the prince, and it is all about the evolving relationship between that character and the prince. We do not need lots and lots of characters with weird subplots and bizarre characters. What we need is a court which creates emotional engagement and empathy, and which pushes the plot forward. So when the main character seems to stall or wants to leave or run away or doesn't want to do anything, somebody in the court can push them forward. And if we look at the way that this works in Beauty and the Beast, that's exactly what Disney have done. You've got 3 to 6 characters who are all totally two-dimensional, really simple. There's the pompous, cowardly one who's really worried. There's the lovable rogue who will try and push the plot forward and encourage the main character. There's the mumsy one who cares about her kid. They're all simple two-dimensional characters who are entertaining in their own way. Oh, Lumiere, I have been burnt by you before, right? It's kind of funny. Oh, the guy who's a clock is called Cogsworth, right? You can get some entertainment out of them, even though they're totally two-dimensional. But they become important because they show you why you should care about what's happening, and they push you forward in the plot. That's it. And they can do it in the most two-dimensional way imaginable. Right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be complicated. So that's your simple option. And if you've got a game where it's all about the characters and the ruler, if you've got a game where the players are just turning up in order to be given a mission and they're going to leave, you don't need to get more complicated. Keep it simple, make it memorable. That's it. Second example. The House of the Crescent Sun is a medieval fantasy campaign, very sandboxy, lots of potential for the players to formulate their own plans. But what happens throughout the campaign is there is a royal court, and the things at the royal court, the events that occur there, will cause plot events which hit the player characters, and the players respond to that. The players will then start going to the court in order to get results they want. So it's very much in 2 places. There is the court in the city, the player characters live up in the valley, things at the court impact the valley, the players can go from the valley to the court. This isn't their whole world. Players have a lot to think about. They have their real lives, they have other things to worry about other than the game, and within the game there's only so much information they're going to keep in their heads. So in order to allow the players to engage with this plot, what we do is we create a situation where it's very clear who is who in the court. There aren't too many people, they have very clear responsibilities, but because the players need to be able to formulate their own plans and engage with these characters, they will have depth. So it's a small number of characters, it's very clear what each one does, but they've got multiple layers of depth, right? Layers, like an onion or an ogre. So you arrive at the court and you go, okay, great, there's this count, he's in charge, right? Who's his wife? In a medieval world, the monarch's wife is really important. Now, he hasn't got one. Well, okay, that keeps it simple. Who's in charge of the castle defences? Oh, that would be Etienne de Cornard. Right, who's Etienne de Cornard? Well, he's the son of a local baron. He's recently been estranged from his wife. Their marriage has been annulled because she can't conceive children. He has to give an heir because he's the only son. His father's completely useless. If he doesn't get a son, the line's going to die out. He's a bit anxious about that. Right, so we've got that depth. We know, simply, this guy is in charge of the guards. He isn't a great warrior, but he's loyal, he's noble, he's going to do his job. The players will realise that immediately, as soon as they start talking to him. He's got a totally transparent character, no hidden agendas. But as you get into talking to him, you realise there are things that he wants. So as a player, you might want to be able to help people, blackmail people, make deals with people, appeal to their emotions, get them on your side. Here's a guy who is actually infertile. He doesn't realise that. He thinks his wife was infertile. It's him. If the player characters can fix that and allow him to create an heir, it's a medieval world with magic in it. Fertility magic is going to be a thing, right? Then they can make an ally out of him. But this is all very straightforward. Right? And who runs the castle servants? Who's that? Oh, that would be Arnaud Deveau, right? And he's doing a good job. He's really solid. He's a bit overbearing, bit of an arse, but he runs a really efficient castle. If you want anything to do with the servants or the grooms or anything like that, you go and talk to Arnaud. Simple, you understand it. Of course, you dig into it a bit more. Actually, he does the organisation. If there's a problem, his wife Adela is the troubleshooter. It's a bit of a double act there. Arnaud is really well connected politically. His stepmother is the player character's nearest neighbour. He's the brother of a really important baron. So as we get into this, as you get to know him more, you realise there are ways you can influence him and he can influence other people. You realise there's a key relationship there which maybe you can get involved in. If he's not giving you what you want, you talk to the wife, perhaps. Right. But we keep it simple. And that's because this is a story where what happens at the court then has consequences for the players. What the players want to do is then come to the court and understand things so they can deal with it. It's two different locations. Keep that location comprehensible so when the players come into it and when the players are affected by things which happen in it, they understand what's going on, but make it deep enough, make the individual characters interesting enough that they can get involved with them, they can form personal relationships, they can form alliances, they can do favours and so forth. Now here's our more complicated example. This is the much more complex one. This, which is the Serpent, this is a science fiction court, but it's still a court. There's an absolute monarch and a bunch of people serving the monarch in different capacities. But this is where the player characters are going to be based. They are resident in the court. All of the stories are based around things happening in the court, at least for the first 2/3 of this campaign. And the player characters are going to want to negotiate with people in the court and get things done. They've got the mental bandwidth to deal with something more complex. And we want to make it more nuanced and more engaging. We want to provoke and engage the players in ways that we don't necessarily in the previous examples. So it's like a map. You go onto the map, you want there to be interesting features in the map. You don't just want it to be, oh, here are some trees and here are some rivers, yeah, get on with it. You want each hex on your map to be interesting. You want all the people in this court to be interesting in the same way. Now, the characters therefore come in, they become resident in the court, and they will explore that court. And they will try and understand what's happening there, and they will try and affect it. So that the players can do this, we do a couple of different things. We set up contrasts. We set up ambiguity. We set up multiple rules to the same goal. Okay. So what I mean by contrasts is, for example, we have two resident geniuses at the court. The Serpent is based on classic Persian stories, and very early on in the Book of Kings, the Persian Book of Kings, there are two princesses who are brought to the court of a legendary king, and they're trained to be sorceresses, and they're his geniuses. Well, that's really boring. Here are two sorceresses, they're geniuses, they're loyal, right? If you do a high combat game, great, two high-level wizards to fight your party of D&D players, right? D&D characters. We want to do something more nuanced, more interesting. So we have two totally different geniuses. We have Dasima the Executioner, who is an absolute psychopath. She's a mad scientist, she's a total genius, and she's utterly, utterly evil. And she loves being there, and she's making the most of it, and she causes a lot of the chaos and the wickedness of the court, which the players then deal with. Okay. But we also have Asma, the genius poet, the artistic prodigy, who is this kind of literary genius who brings light and insight and so forth to the court, and the ruler falls in love with her because she's so wonderful and genius and so forth, and she's the virtuous one. So we've got an evil one, we've got a good one, we've got a scientific genius, we've got an artistic genius. These are all about contrasts. And we also ensure that the players can approach any problem in multiple ways because no resource is controlled by a single character. So if you remember back to the House of the Crescent Sun, who commands the guards? Etienne de Cornard. Well, in this case, if you want to get soldiers to do a favour for you, you can go to the ruler, You can go to the cautious, solid, loyal commander, general, or you can go to an ambitious young upstart officer. We've defined different characters, you can find different routes to your goal. And this idea of having contrasts and characters that give different perspectives is something that runs through the campaign. So you don't just turn up and say, well, who's the main advisor, who's the person we talk to before we talk to the ruler. There are two main advisors. Quick note, because this has a sort of Persian Arabian Nights kind of feel to it, I realised playtesting this very early on, if you call somebody a Grand Vizier, everyone knows they're the bad guy. So neither of these advisors get called the Grand Vizier. Okay, because people know nothing about Arabic culture, by and large. They know nothing about Persian literature, by and large, but they've seen the Aladdin movie and they know the Grand Vizier is the bad guy. So we don't call either of these two advisors a vizier. Right? They're just advisors. But the player characters can talk to them and they understand they have very different personalities. One of them is feathering their own nest. One of them is building up intelligence contacts. One of them is completely loyal. One of them is totally self-serving. We show two different images of what an advisor can be like. Both of them are present, and the player characters can engage with both of them as they wish in order to get to the goals they want to get to. And through all these interactions, because the NPCs show different facets of the court, it creates a richer experience. Go back to Beauty and the Beast. We don't want a richer experience. Not useful to us, right? We want it simple and comprehensible. Here we want the ambiguity and we want the richness. So hopefully these three examples give you that sense that in order to make a court interesting, we approach it based on the outcome we want and the kind of story that we're trying to tell. You might keep it completely simple, two-dimensional, memorable, and just push the plot forward. You might make it comprehensible, easy to understand. Players from outside can comprehend the court easily and make decisions quickly, tactically. Or you might make it really rich and evocative with lots of contrasts and ambiguities and different routes to the same goal. And this is a function of what sort of campaign we're trying to run. But whatever you're running, hopefully those three examples are useful to you.